happy relatives, Mbiwa Tahushka, Opi Miha. Welcome back to Iconic American Indian, the podcast. I'm your host, Opi Miha. I'm going to play a little bit of music till we get some people into the live stream. Kind of hot, happy relatives, come on in. Hope everyone is doing well on this Friday. We're going to roll some music for a few minutes till we get some people into the live stream. All right, relatives, thank you for joining me today. Peace, David Corey. Appreciate you being here. I wanted to cover something real quick that I stumbled across. I found a video talking about Heirs property. And the reason why it kind of caught my attention is because a lot of us are going to start coming across land that our ancestors had, and in that finding of the land, you were going to see, that it's being passed down to the heirs. So usually you would be the direct descendant of, whatever ancestor had the property. So Peace, God agree. So what I wanted to do is I'm going to play the audio version of this Vice video, so this isn't going to be a super long live stream. I want you guys to just really listen into this story. It's very emotional, has a lot of ties to all of us, and yeah, so we'll go ahead and kick that off. And like I said, I'm just going to play the audio portion. I'm not going to play the actual visuals because I may get flagged. So we'll go that route. All right, y'all. So give me just 1 second. Cue this up, and see here.
There are a lot of great $600,000, $1 million, $2 million homes.
Your biggest decision is, do I want to go to the beach or the pool, and what am I going to grill for dinner?
South Carolina, Hilton Head. What's going on there?
People with families, everybody loves Hilton Head.
One of the best ways for an American family to create intergenerational wealth is to own some land. It's in high demand and they don't make it anymore. I'm standing on the beach of the beautiful island of Hilton Head, South Carolina,
Hopefully you guys can
where
hear
after
this,
the
okay.
Civil War, Black people owned most of this. But over the decades, the land was lost. And to this day, we got Black folks that are still fighting to keep their little piece of the American dream. By 1910, African Americans owned around 16 million acres of land, much of it acquired through purchases and homesteading. But after years of violence, intimidation, and legal trickery, most of it was taken. Texas A&M law professor Thomas Mitchell has been tracking that loss for 2 decades.
Historically, if we're talking about African Americans, despite this incredible acquisition of land after the Civil War, most of that property was not considered prime real estate. For example, Hilton Head, South Carolina. Until 1950, Hilton Head was remote. There wasn't a bridge from the South Carolina mainland out to Hilton Head Island, and the island was owned by majority African Americans.
Right.
What does South Carolina do? They build a bridge. Real estate developers realize, oh, there's a great economic opportunity, and they have the visions of what has become Hilton Head.
The indigo, rice, and long staple cotton of the past have given way to the golf, tennis, and swimming of today's leisure society.
They started buying out individual families, and there's hardly any Black landowners left. And what's just happened as our society has advanced, areas that were once considered the backwaters no longer are the backwaters.
We're on a mission right now to get this tangerine. The vulnerability of Black land isn't limited to the coastlines. It's widespread throughout the United States, even in my hometown of Tallahassee. Sandra Thompson learned just how hard it can be to maintain possession of land that developers want to get their hands on. I remember growing up in Tallahassee. This was the sticks. I went to school with people that lived out here. We'd be like, you live in the boonies, in the boondocks.
It's actually now zoned urban fringe.
Urban fringe.
Urban fringe.
People try to buy it.
All the time.
Sandra's family were sharecroppers on this land. Her grandparents bought it in 1946 using money their son made serving in the military. But their will didn't clearly identify a single person who would inherit and manage the property.
When my grandmother passed away, it was left equally to her descendants. So that essentially created heirs property.
Heirs property. On the most basic level, what is it?
Heirs property is communal type property where your ancestors would have purchased the land, and once they passed away, it transfers to the next generation and then their descendants. It's fractional ownership, a property that could be owned by 200 people. Any one of those heirs could sell their percentage. That new owner can go to the court and say, well, we can't agree on how to manage this land.
And force the rest of the folk to sell it even if they don't want to?
Yes. And so it was essential for us to move it out of heirs property status. And that process costs from probate to title clearing close to about $10,000.
Wait, so you own the land, but then you had to pay $10,000 to own the land again?
Exactly. Because of the cost. A lot of families don't clear title to their property. And so then it keeps them in a vulnerable economic risk position.
African Americans disproportionately own heirs property that every lawyer who was knowledgeable about this ownership form would tell them, run away. Do not ever own it under this structure. And so you're having a population sitting in this very vulnerable way, and oftentimes in a way that they don't understand how the law operates, sometimes until a lawsuit is filed.
This land been in our family for at least 125 years. Started with my great-grandfather. The land is, for me, a lot of memories, part of my roots. I was proud of the name Lewis. We worked to have something. And I guess say we lost it.
The Lewis family owned 480 acres of land and a homestead in northern Louisiana. Because the land was heirs property, several distant family members were able to sell their share of it to a local timber developer named James Tuggle. Tuggle forced the sale of the land that happened last year.
My great-great-grandfather raised 13 kids where that house sits. I mean, there are so many heirs tied into the Lewis properties, it'll make your head spin. Taxes were always paid on time. We were under the impression that could no one person from the family just up and sell any part of the property without anyone being notified.
Do you all know the relatives that sold their part?
I've only seen one once.
You in New York, wherever, going on with your life, you don't really know nothing about this little country spot right here. You don't know nothing about this here.
As part of the legal process, the forced sale of heirs property has to be publicly announced. In the Lewis's situation, a local newspaper posted a notice in the weeks leading up to the auction.
This is a small town.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is not like the Washington Post, New York Journal, or whatever, you know. There's no paper out here in the country that's being delivered to the doorstep. You know, ain't no ball riding no bicycle throwing no paper on the front porch down here. So walk in and just do a family like that. I don't understand that. My mama keep the insurance on this house. She keep a roof on this house. She keep these bills paid on this house. You know, my thing is, your house has been here for years. Because of a technicality, you uprooted a family.
Shortly after James Tuggle completed the purchase of the Lewis property last year, the sheriff evicted Michael. So this is where your
trailer was sitting here. Those are the steps to the front entrance. I called the sheriff. Well, it's his property. He can do with what he wants.
The sheriff saying that Tuggle could do what he wants.
He can do what he wants. It's his property. I suggest you move the trailer. He says, well, that's all I can tell you. Is there anything I can help you with? I told him no.
Michael ended up with a little over $2,800 for his share of the property. He used it to relocate his trailer home to a half-acre lot nearby.
Still got to put in a water line. The water line's across the road. I could be angry to the point that I want to do something to somebody. I mean, you're talking about 125 years of family heritage.
Michael invited us in to see the documents from the local district court that informed them their land was being targeted for sale.
This is a petition that came to us via the sheriff's department. This is the very first document that we received.
You're hereby cited to comply with the demand contained in the petition, which office is in the town of Homer, said parish, state. You have
There's
15
a lot of words
days after
thrown
this.
at somebody that really can't understand some of the lingo, so to speak. And we get up to the office to find out exactly what it is that they're trying to say.
To make sense of these documents and get a better understanding of what happened to the Lewises, we visited the clerk of court, Brian Flynn.
Anything involving a partition lawsuit is filed here in this office. I'm the custodian of all of these records that you see. So you want to take this out in the front?
Yeah, we take it out.
All right, you did.
When it comes to developers, what's the mechanism that they use to track down family members?
Okay, they'll come into this office, and then generally you know the piece of property that you're looking for. You know, whether that is because it's got some timber on it or something of that nature. Then what you do is you can look at the tax assessor's office, and the tax assessor's office will give you just a visual plat, a hand-drawn plat of how the property went from one person to the next person to the next person. And that's how they'll initially find out who owns the property.
So what happened with the Lewises?
The Lewises are a family that is spread out across the United States. So James Terry Tuggle buys into that property. Now, he didn't just buy a sliver of that property. He ended up buying somewhere in the neighborhood of 20%.
Understood.
Once he owns that, he can force the entire thing to be sold.
And that's what he did.
Which he did.
That's Over the course of a decade, Tuggle, a timber developer in town, bought the shares of more than 20 people connected to the Lewis property, most of them from out of state. He declined our request for an interview and didn't respond to our written questions.
So the sale happens at the sheriff's office, where it is publicly open for bid, and it's sold for $555,000.
And a bargain of a price, right?
Well, I mean, I don't know, $550,000
for 500 acres.
Oh, I've seen 17 acres of land sold for $1,800, and believe me, that, that's disturbing.
The sale he's talking about was made in 2001 to a real estate investor named James Steele, who advertises his ability to force the sale of Heirs property. We caught up with him at a sheriff's auction nearby.
All right, suit number 41821, Tree Investments, LLC versus Maurice Hunter et al. The minimum acceptable bid is $2,294.25. The floor is now open for bids. Do I hear a bid?
Bid cost.
Okay, $2,294.25 is sold. Just put your name right there.
Morning, Jim.
Morning.
How you doing?
Fine.
What just happened today here?
Well, I bought an interest in a piece of land, an undivided interest. When it's inherited and there's a lot of heirs. I owned 24 acres out of the 52.
Before the day you did?
Yes.
And now you came and purchased the rest. How much have you paid in total for 52 acres?
I would have to add that up because don't get me wrong, I do a lot of these and I can't keep them all in my head.
How does Heirs property fit into your overall business model?
To be truthful with it, it's probably 90% of my business model. Even going back to the Civil War, we're doing something that the people in the Civil War had it. I mean, they were slaves and they had it. And I've had other landowners come to me and say, well, would you file a lawsuit for me and do this? Because I don't want to be the bad guy. You be the bad guy because you already been the bad guy. You do this all the time. I'll be the bad guy.
You recognize that what you're doing is perceived.
You look at me as evil.
No, I don't know. No, I'm saying no. No, I don't. No. What I'm saying is, to the family member that wants to sell, you're bringing the bank. You're bringing the money. To the family member that doesn't want to sell, you're evil.
Probably in their eyes.
Yeah.
And some people are sincere about not wanting to sell. They mean it. Most don't. Most say that, but they don't mean it. They just want instant gratification and money now. But there are some that don't want to sell, and it's usually the ones that live on the property that are getting free rent, free everything.
It's their land. That's not free rent.
Well, they only own a minuscule portion of it. I've heard it thousands of times. You can't make me sell my land. And then I respond back. I said, yes, I can.
But it's my land.
Well, it used to be.
Jim, that ain't
The bottom line is what you have is these families who many times owned property for generations, including families who acquired ownership right after the end of the Civil War. Their property rights are instantaneously extinguished, and then they are stripped of a significant amount of their overall wealth, not just their real estate wealth, because African Americans disproportionately who have assets, it's represented in land and homes. So their single greatest asset now has been sold at a fire sale, and they're getting pennies on the dollar.
The way that this system is set up, it seems like it disproportionately affects African Americans who, through legal trickery and threats of violence and lynching and whatnot, land has been taken from them.
Well,
you see what I'm saying?
I hadn't lynched anybody lately, so but and you know, and people like me, I'm at least nefarious. I'm a opportunist. I'm a racist. I've been called everything in the world. Well, I'm not a racist. I don't go after certain things just because you're black or you're Asian or you what.
You going after the
land. So if everybody in the world could sell a piece of land to their brother or their sister or their son, and nobody could build factories, nobody could do anything, it would always be out of commerce and never be able to use. There's no remedy to get it back into commerce. And
do you think it's fair?
It has to be. It has to be fair.
Jim Steele wasn't involved in the forced sale of the Lewis property. James Tuggle, the developer who was, let Greg stay on the land, but his mother decided to leave.
This is my mother's house. When she retired, this became her home.
Why did she leave here?
She left here because she was nervous about whether or not her mama's house was going to be pushed down and whether or not her house was going to be next. She couldn't sleep at night. She just didn't feel safe.
Greg's mother, Miss Trudy Stanley, and other members of the Lewis family tried to formalize their ownership when they found out it was being targeted for sale. Mr. Tuggle was years ahead of them in the process and outbid them during last year's auction. Shortly after that, Miss Stanley moved in with her daughter in Washington, D.C.
It's painful to realize that I don't have it anymore. It's not right. I didn't sell my part of the property. Only somebody else came, sold that part, so they affect the whole family. We didn't know the law, so we could protect it. So we lost it like that. Every year, we paid the taxes. We didn't just leave it alone to forget it. We took our resources and made sure we got the taxes paid. Everything, that's what we did.
Why do you think your grandfather didn't make a will?
Well, I don't think back during that day they were thinking about making a will. But my grandparents prepared for what he knew at the time and what he had to do at the time, prepare for my family. So I know it's different because you need a will. Because there's going to be chaos in their families.
How important was the land to you?
420 acres of land. It means a lot. And to lose it, you had no defense, you know what to do, you lost it. That was devastating. It still is. It will ever, forever be that way. Because that's the law.
Part of the reason we have in the African American community such a high incidence of heirs property is that when African Americans moved from the status of being property themselves to after the Civil War, being able to become landowners,
right?
Hardly any of these families were able to structure the ownership in a way that would be stable because most African American families had no access to attorneys. And there's studies in various southern states that show that it's somewhere between 10 and 40% of all property African Americans own is heirs property, because a huge percentage of these families don't have wills or estate plans. And what they know is their property transfers to their heirs. There's a huge racial will making or estate planning gap. Average white family has 10 times the assets of the average black family. Real estate developers or speculators or investors, they know that. And so what they do is they give a lowball price because they know that the family can't even compete against the lowball price.
According to United States Forest Service research, there's around $28 billion worth of heirs property in the South. And that's a conservative estimate. Thomas Mitchell drafted legislation designed to help families hold on to theirs. So far, it's passed in 16 states.
So the first provision is if somebody files one of these lawsuits and requests a court to order the forced sale of the property, what the other owners are then entitled to is to buy out the person who asked for the forced sale. There had been this narrative that Black landowners were inevitably going to be extinct by about now. I was like, why are we going to sit back and watch more and more property and land and homes go, and then on the back end call for reparations, as opposed to trying to stabilize the ownership so that it's not dissipated 20 or 30 years from now?
My family homesteaded these properties. They raised families on these properties. Mr. Tuggle, he ain't gonna build nothing on it. It's all for the timber. All for the timber. Far as you can see on all these hills, this is fresh cut. I mean, right after he purchased, he went to cutting. It was in the family for 125 years.
All of this.
All of this. My aunts and uncles' houses sat up on the top up here. You can see that it's been wiped clean of pine, and everything that you see pushed up, they're gonna come back and burn it and then replant. This is important that you stick together, you keep your interests together, you hold tight to your interests. And if you plan on doing anything with your interests, make sure you do it in the family. Keep it in the family. That's where we fell short. Because whatever they got from him now is probably gone. Just like everything else.
All right, relatives. So that link to that video is in the description, but I'll put it here in the chat for you. I feel like that's a very important video for everyone who is starting to come up on the land patents and land deeds and all that stuff. There's some important messages in that. There's a link to the video in there, and I wanted to read something real quick too before I go. So heirs, property, and land fractionation. I wanted to read this real quick and blow it up so you guys can see it. So it says, publication year 2019, general technical support. Sources eGen Tech Rep SRS 244, Asheville, North Carolina, U.S. Department of Agriculture, Forest Service, Southern Research Station. And it says, real property passed to subsequent generations via intestate succession is termed a tenancy in common, or more colloquially, heirs property. Property may also be classed as heirs property via an intentional simple will, that divides real estate assets equally among descendants. With this kind of property ownership, co-heirs hold fractional interest in property that is not physically divided. As such, heirs property represents a form of collective ownership. Owners are private property holders, but are limited in their ability to use such properties to build wealth, because creditors typically do not accept these properties as bona fide collateral. Heirs property ownership is thought to be especially prevalent among rural African Americans in the Black Belt South, Appalachian whites, Hispanics in the U.S., Southwestern colonial communities, and Native American groups. The U.S. Department of Agricultural Forest Services Southern Research Station and the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta hosted a gathering of Heirs property researchers and direct legal services provided on June 15, 2017 in Atlanta, Georgia. With the aim to clarify problems associated with tendencies for these groups, the convening was organized into panels which addresses estimations of the extension of heirs property in the South, research on cultural aspects of heirs property ownership and experiences of direct legal service providers, and included a decision of how heirs property in urban areas contributes to abandoned and blighted buildings. Collaborators also work to identify opportunities that would improve data collection, decrease property vulnerability, and better protect generational wealth. These proceedings include papers from many of the conference presenters, as well as papers contributed by additional subject matter experts. So, you know, I'm not a land expert or, you know, an expert in law and all those different things, but I see David Corey said that he was going through something like this, and Stephen Redclay, I know that he is someone who purchases land and has a lot of expertise in this as well. But from what I'm seeing is you need to have a will if you're going for this land, this heirs land or these lands with deeds and different things like that. You got to have a will to keep this land in your family. If you're just doing it by heirs and, you know, you think it's going to get passed down to the next, you know, generation, the problem with that is that, you know, all it takes is one person to sell. And you know that, you know, your, I don't know, fourth, fifth, sixth great grandparent, how many ancestors you have till now. So, you know, again, all it takes is one of them to sell, and it's a done deal, like Stephen Redclay mentioned earlier. So again, you know, I didn't want to make this a super long live stream. Let me go through the chat real quick and say what's up to everybody. Got a green piece, good to see you. David Corey, appreciate you being here as well. Rojo Cheap Clothing, peace, good to see you. Raw Jeweler, peace, good to see you, bro. Stephen Redclay, peace, relative, good to see you. Let's see what else we got here. G West, what's good, sis? Glad you're here. One more read, Halita, thank you for being here. Let's see who else we got. I saw Cherokee Toulouse, peace, sis, thank you for coming in. Brother Lawrence, peace to you. Good to see you. Golden Moon, Grant Rising, peace to you. Les Bradley, peace to see you, relative. Thank you for stopping in. Fred 9455, peace, my bro. Good to see you. Hermosa Sheba, peace, sis. Let's see who else. I'm born here. Peace and power to you, my brother. Good to see you. Let's see if anybody else I'm missing. I am who I am. Peace to you. Good to see you as well. Arthur Gray. Peace, brother. Good to see you. Glennis Wright. Peace, brother. Good to see you. Let's see if I missed anybody. I think this might have skipped ahead a little bit, but I appreciate all Miss Parker. He says, good to see you. You know, again, I think this was an important video. I think you all should take the time to watch it. You know, you'll see the okie doke being pulled on a lot of families, but I did see that there's a heirs an Heirs property team that actually is trying to do something about this. Again, like you guys heard, the people who are trying to buy up the land, they go to these, property sales, these auction share sales, and, buy up land for pennies. And this is land that had been in people's families for hundreds of years. You guys saw that the one guy was saying that, this person took 500 acres, basically, for $500,000 because one person out of the heirs who didn't even live on that land sold. And that's all it takes is just one. And all they want off of the land is just the timber, the resources that are on the land. They don't care about building anything on it. They don't care about, making housing for people. 500 acres is a ton of land. You guys can all think of, all the good things that could be done with that amount of property. So, a lot of us, again, are starting to find land deeds and all that, land patents and all that stuff now. So I know some of the ones that I found from my family do say heirs on it. So, that's, it's probably going to be a court battle trying to get that land, but that's what I wanted to bring to you guys. Like I said, this isn't going to be a super live stream. But the video is in the description if anyone wants to go back and check it out. I advise that you do. I also dropped it in the chat. So definitely check that out. Look up the information on Heirs property. Yeah, I'm not sure, David Corey. Like I said, I'm not an expert on this. I found it very eye-opening when I watched the video exactly what's going on with people who are losing land that have had it, for generations. So, but yeah, I appreciate y'all coming out to the live stream. I love you all, and I'll see everyone next time. Y'all take care.
Relatives, and BY, Hushka, Obi Miha.
This is a dangerous group that we're dealing with now.
Dodge the hijack again.
Nabi relatives.
They had no idea their ancestors had been free.
I'll beat me half. 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 I'll beat me half.
They had no idea their ancestors